I Did Not Expect to Live to See the Dawn by J.C. Penney. On April 14, 1902, a young man with $500 in cash and $1 million in determination opened a dry goods store in Kemmerer, Wyoming, a little mining town of 1,000 people situated on the old covered wagon trail laid out by the Lewis and Clark expedition. That young man and his wife lived in a half-story attic above the store, using a large empty dry goods box for a table and smaller boxes for chairs. The young wife wrapped her baby in a blanket and let it sleep under a counter while she stood beside it, helping her husband wait on customers. Today, the largest chain of dry goods stores in the world bears that man's name, the J.C. Penney stores, over 1,600 of them, covering every state in the Union. I recently had dinner with Mr. Penney, and he told me about the most dramatic moment of his life. Years ago, I passed through a most trying experience. I was worried and desperate. My worries were not connected in any way whatever with the J.C. Penney Company, and that business was solid and thriving. But I personally had made some unwise commitments prior to the crash of 1929. Like many other men, I was blamed for conditions for which I was in no way responsible. I was so harassed with worries that I couldn't sleep and developed an extremely painful ailment known as the shingles, a red rash and skin eruptions. I consulted a physician, a man with whom I'd gone to high school as a boy in Hamilton, Missouri, Dr. Elmer Eggleston, a staff physician at the Kellogg Sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan. Dr. Eggleston put me to bed and warned me that I was a very ill man. A rigid treatment was prescribed, but nothing helped. I got weaker day by day. I was broken nervously and physically, filled with despair, unable to see even a ray of hope. I had nothing to live for. I felt I hadn't a friend left in the world, that even my family had turned against me. One night Dr. Eggleston gave me a sedative, but the effect soon wore off, and I awoke with an overwhelming conviction that this was my last night of life. Getting out of bed, I wrote farewell letters to my wife and to my son, saying that I did not expect to live to see the dawn. When I awoke the next morning, I was surprised to find that I was still alive. Going downstairs, I heard singing in a little chapel where devotional exercises were held each morning. I can still remember the hymn they were singing, "God Will Take Care of You." Going into the chapel, I listened with a weary heart to the singing, the reading of the scripture lesson, and the prayer. Suddenly, something happened. I can't explain it. I can only call it a miracle. I felt as if I had been instantly lifted out of the darkness of a dungeon into warm, brilliant sunlight. I felt as if I'd been transported from hell to paradise. I felt the power of God as I had never felt it before. I realized then that I alone was responsible for all my troubles. I knew that God, with His love, was there to help me. From that day to this, my life has been free from worry. I am 71 years old, and the most dramatic and glorious 20 minutes of my life were those I spent in that chapel that morning. God will take care of you. J.C. Penney learned to overcome worry almost instantaneously because he discovered the one perfect cure.